News: death, taxes and questionable Ferrari strategy. 2026 is here. Mercedes take the 1-2 victory, but it was far from as easy as many thought it might be coming into Sunday. Ferrari pushed Mercedes hard and arguably should have been far closer, if not winning this race, if not for a questionable strategy decision earlier on in the Grand Prix. Mercedes might have had too much anyway, but all things considered, a better start to the season for the fans than some were expecting.
And well, it was George Russell who ended up winning the first race of the new Formula One era. As I say though, he did not have it all his own way. I mean, the opening part of the race saw Russell and Ferrari's Charles Leclerc battle really hard for the lead. I mean, they were swapping positions lap after lap. It was absolutely fantastic to see. And then at one point, Russell went for a move going into turn one, locked up, held up both himself and Leclerc, and Lewis Hamilton, who was in third place at the time, arrived on the scene. And then it was three cars fighting for the lead going into one corner. It was absolutely fantastic racing. I really enjoyed it. However, the action between Mercedes and Ferrari came to a halt when the virtual safety car came out.
Lewis Hamilton just stunned everybody with a brutal, personal and ice-cold response to George Russell. And here's the thing, Russell didn't see it coming. After dominating the 2026 Australian Grand Prix, taking home a flawless 1-2 with Mercedes, George Russell decided to have a little fun at Hamilton's expense.
The positives to take from it, we got a lot of work to do to catch Mercedes, but it's not impossible. So really, to a big grazie tutti to everyone back at the factory. I'm really proud of everybody for the work that we got, but we still got to keep pushing, keep digging deep, and I'm excited for I'll keep pushing into the next race.
It's just a
His message to Lewis: shut up and focus on your own stuff. Now, most people would have just let that slide, but Lewis Hamilton does not let things slide. And what Hamilton fired back, quietly, deliberately, and with the calm confidence of a 7-time world champion, sent a warning to Mercedes, to Russell, and to the entire paddock. Stay right here, because this one gets personal. Let's rewind to Albert Park, the 2026 Formula One season opener. Going into the weekend, all eyes were on Lewis Hamilton. His first full season in Ferrari Red, a new era, a new team, and a burning, desperate hunger to add to those 7 World Championship titles. And honestly, the weekend started brilliantly. Hamilton was flying in practice, strong, confident, looking every inch like a man reborn in red. Then came qualifying. Ferrari hit some problems, technical gremlins, and Hamilton, who by all accounts had the pace to be significantly further forward, found himself stuck in P7 on the grid. P7, 7 tenths behind the pace setter, George Russell. Meanwhile, Mercedes locked out the entire front row. Russell on pole. His young teammate Kimi Antonelli right alongside him. The Silver Arrows had arrived, and they had arrived with a monster. But the race told a very different story. When those lights went out on Sunday, Charles Leclerc launched off the line like a missile, sweeping past George Russell and taking the lead. Lewis Hamilton, he was a man on a mission too, carving his way from 7th to 3rd before the end of the opening lap. For a moment, just a moment, it looked like Ferrari had a race on their hands. Then came the virtual safety cars. Twice during the middle stages of the race, the VSC was deployed. And twice, Ferrari made the call that would haunt their Sunday afternoon. They stayed out. Mercedes pitted. Both Russell and Antonelli. Double stack, clean stop, cheap laps. And suddenly, Hamilton and Leclerc's lead evaporated. When the Ferraris eventually pitted under green flag conditions, they lost around 10 seconds of precious race time. Hamilton was furious on the radio. One of us should have come in. And then, watching Russell's gap come down, how are they only 10 seconds behind? And when the pit lane entry was closed during the second VSC, blocking Ferrari's last chance to react. How did you not call? How did you not call the pit, man? Raw, unfiltered, and completely understandable. Despite those lost seconds, Hamilton chased Leclerc down in the final laps, closing the gap with fresher tyres, looking rapid, but time ran out. He crossed the line half a second behind his teammate. Fourth place. No podium, no champagne. Just a gap of 13 seconds to Antonelli in second, 16 seconds to Russell in first. And that's the moment George Russell decided to poke the bear. George Russell flew home from Melbourne absolutely beaming. A race win, a team 1-2, the fastest car on the grid by a country mile, and what the world was starting to call a monster engine. A clever trick involving the geometric compression ratio that had rivals scratching their heads and stewards raising eyebrows. Life was good for George Russell. So when he sat down with Viaplay after the race, he was relaxed, he was smiling, and he had a little message ready for his old teammate. You see, Russell and Hamilton were flying home together on the same private flight to Monaco. And when asked how he planned to celebrate his victory, beer or cocktail, Russell laughed and said, "I'm flying with Lewis, so I'm sure I'm going to hear about your engine is so good, your compression ratio is illegal, and this and that. So yeah, I think I'll just try and get to sleep quite early. I'll just say, shut up and focus on your own stuff." Now look, in isolation, that's banter. That's two racing drivers having a laugh. But here's what makes it more than just banter. Mercedes did have a pace advantage, a clear, significant, uncomfortable for everyone else advantage, and Hamilton had been talking about it. He'd questioned their power unit, he'd pointed at their battery performance, he'd said, publicly, that Mercedes seemed to have more power than everyone else. So for Russell to essentially say, "Stop moaning, focus on yourself," that lands differently. That's a shot. And Lewis Hamilton heard it. Here's where it gets interesting. Here's where Hamilton shows exactly why he is who he is. Because Hamilton didn't clap back loudly. He didn't rant. He didn't go on the offensive. He did something far more dangerous. He smiled. He stayed calm. And he delivered one of the most carefully worded, quietly devastating responses in recent F1 memory. First, he acknowledged the weekend with grace. "I feel great. I feel like I could have kept going. I wish the race was longer. Another 5 laps or so, I think I would have got third. There's lots and lots of positives to take from today, and the car's feeling great. It was actually a really fun race." Then, directly addressing Mercedes' advantage, Hamilton said, "We've got some work to do to try and catch up. We've got to work on improving our power. Clearly because they've just got more power than everyone, it seems. Or more battery power. Not really sure what it is." Notice what he did there? He kept the question alive. He kept the pressure on Mercedes. He did not let it go.
The Ferrari suffering from deployment issues with their battery when it really mattered, and the closest man to the Mercedes rocket ship, especially around a power startup circuit, was Isaac Hadjar in the Red Bull, because Max Verstappen's car binned it on the very first corner of his first lap. Max is not a happy man, neither are Charles Leclerc and the guys at Ferrari. The smiles are clear on the faces of the Mercedes team.
We all know Lewis Hamilton just stunned everybody with his performance. Also, his ex-team wants to copy him, and it's Mercedes. But what happened in Melbourne that completely stunned Lewis Hamilton? Not just stunned, he also worried and disappointment with Mercedes. Extra power, and George Russell just shocked him, but that not all. Lewis Hamilton also fires back with complaint to FIA, and also his performance, and wants to come back that Mercedes. One option just scratching their heads.
News 365, I don't understand it exactly. They didn't show that they could turn it up in testing, and now they've got this extra power from somewhere. We need to understand what it is. I hope it's not this compression ratio thing. Hopefully it's just pure power, and we've got to do a better job. But if it is the compression thing, then I will be disappointed that the FIA allow that to be the case, that it's not to the book. I will be pushing my team to do the same thing, so we can get more powerful. Now, throughout the pre-season period, the potential of Mercedes' power unit was noted by rivals, particularly due to its reported compression ratio advantage, and the FIA is implementing measures they...
What's clear is that they didn't show the engine power through any of the practice, because there's the whole talk of compression ratio, and they've obviously done a really solid job with their engine, which we have as well, but it would be interesting to... I want to understand why it's like 0.2 or more just through power per sector. And so if it is a compression thing, I want to understand why the FIA haven't done anything and what's being done to rectify it. But if it's not and it's just pure fail, then
George Russell, pole position. Kimi Antonelli, second place. Mercedes, 1-2 lockout. And Hamilton, 7th. Nearly a full second off pole. But here's what makes this story bigger than just a bad qualifying session. Hamilton didn't just get beaten. He raised alarm bells about something that could decide the entire 2026 World Championship. Something that has the FIA scrambling, Ferrari fuming, and the paddock asking one question: is Mercedes cheating, or are they just that good? Let's break it all down. Before we get into Melbourne, let's set the stage. Because to understand why this moment matters, you have to understand who Lewis Hamilton is. 7 world championships, the same number as Michael Schumacher. The man the entire sport once said could never be matched. 103 race victories, the most in Formula One history. A record that may never be broken. He drives with a feel that most drivers simply don't have. Hamilton has a supernatural ability to read a tyre, to know exactly how many laps of life remain before the rubber falls off a cliff. He doesn't just drive fast, he manages a race like a grandmaster plays chess. His wet weather performances? Legendary. Nürburgring 2021, Silverstone, Brazil 2016, where he carved through the entire field in the rain like no one else existed on track. His qualifying laps are pieces of art. The 2017 Baku lap, the 2019 Bahrain lap, the 2020 Turkish qualifying, where he put a car on pole that nobody else could even keep on the road. People call him the GOAT for a reason. Not just because of the numbers, though the numbers are staggering, but because of how he's done it. Across 3 different eras of regulation, against Alonso, against Vettel, against Verstappen. Season after season, Hamilton found a way. And in 2025, in the most symbolic move in modern motorsport history, he left Mercedes, the team he'd spent 12 years building into a dynasty, and moved to Ferrari, the red car, the dream team, the chance at a fairy tale 8th title. But Melbourne 2026 just gave him the hardest reality check of his career. Let's talk about Saturday at Albert Park, because the numbers are genuinely jaw-dropping. George Russell didn't just take pole position, he dominated every single sector of qualifying, every part of the lap. Sector 1, Sector 2, Sector 3, silver all the way. Kimi Antonelli, just 18 years old, Hamilton's replacement at Mercedes, by the way, qualified 2nd. Teammate, 1-2 lockout. Red Bull's Isaac Hadjar was the closest rival in 3rd, and he was 0.8 of a second behind. 0.8. In Formula One terms, that is a chasm. That is a different planet. Ferrari. Charles Leclerc was 0.8 and a bit back in 4th. Hamilton himself, the 7-time world champion, was nearly a full second off pole in 7th. 0.960 seconds. Now here's where it gets interesting. Throughout practice on Friday, Mercedes looked fast. Sure, but not this fast. They hadn't shown this kind of pace. They'd kept their cards close to their chest. And then, in qualifying, they simply turned it up. And nobody, including Hamilton, could explain it. Hamilton said, they didn't show that they could turn it up in testing, and now they've got this extra power from somewhere, and we need to understand what that is. Extra power from somewhere. That phrase alone sent the paddock into overdrive. Here's the technical part. Stay with me, because it matters. For 2026, Formula One introduced sweeping new regulations. Everything changed. The cars, the aerodynamics, the power units, and as part of those new rules, the FIA reduced the maximum engine compression ratio to 16:1, down from 18:1. A higher compression ratio means more power. The rules are supposed to level the playing field, but, and this is the key, the FIA only tests the compression ratio when the engine is cold, stone cold, sitting still in the garage. Mercedes, according to rival teams, found a loophole. When the engine heats up to full operating temperature on track, running at 130 degrees, the metal components thermally expand, and the compression ratio expands with them, beyond the legal limit. But because the FIA only checks it cold, it passes the test. The FIA announced a fix. From June 1st, they'll test at both cold and 130 degrees. But that new test only kicks in after the 7th round of the season. Hamilton isn't interested in the compromise. He's furious about the delay. If it is the compression ratio thing, then I will be disappointed that the FIA allowed that to be the case. It's not to the book, and I'll be pushing my team to do the same thing so we can get more power. Translation: if Mercedes are gaming the rules, Hamilton wants Ferrari to game them too. Hamilton's frustration isn't just about lap times, it's about fairness, about whether the sport he's dedicated 20 years of his life to is being run properly. I want to understand why the FIA haven't done anything, if it is a
The preseason is over. 2 weeks today, the teams will hit the track in Melbourne for the first time in an official capacity. But where do we stand? 6 days of testing in Bahrain, a 5-day shakedown in Barcelona before that. All the teams seem to agree there are 2 at the top of the pecking order, but no one really seems to know who is the favourites. Mercedes and Ferrari. Those are the 2 teams on everyone's tongues. Some say Mercedes are better in other conditions, but it was Charles Leclerc today dominating the timesheets. Was it a glory run? Are there other factors in play? Who are the real favourites when we go to Australia? This week is the final test ahead of the 2026 season opener, and yet more positivity surrounding Ferrari, yet more upgrades they're bringing to their car this week, in addition to confirmation that they were indeed using the new Shell biofuel in their very successful first Bahrain test just a few days ago. Lots of questions surrounding all the teams as to what fuels they're really running their engines on. We believe in Barcelona, largely a hybrid 2025 version, but now Ferrari's solid performance, and it's only going to get better according to rumours, is being run as we will see things in Melbourne.
We're going to be talking about a key decision that's been made on Ferrari as testing in 2026 comes to a close.
Ferrari just did something in Bahrain that nobody saw coming. 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. The biggest signing in Formula One history. The most hyped driver transfer of all time. And yet, after 3 days of preseason testing, his best lap of the entire week was a 1 minute 33.408. His teammate, Charles Leclerc, 1 minute 31.992 seconds. That's almost 1.5 seconds faster. And Leclerc didn't just beat Hamilton. He beat Lando Norris, the reigning world champion. He beat Max Verstappen. He beat George Russell. He beat everyone. Ferrari are back, and the 2026 season hasn't even started yet. Before we get into Leclerc's insane lap, let's set the stage. This was day 3, the final day of the second preseason test in Bahrain. 2 tests, 3 days each, and this was it. The last look any team gets at their rivals before the season-opening Australian Grand Prix on March 6th to 8th. Ferrari made an interesting call going into Friday. They put Leclerc in the car for the entire day, all day, both sessions. That means 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, the man Ferrari paid a fortune to sign, sat in the garage and watched. Now, was that a statement? Was it strategic? We'll get to that. But here's what matters. Leclerc responded with the drive of pre-season testing. Meanwhile, there were a few notable situations playing out across the paddock. Aston Martin, absolute nightmare. Lance Stroll was supposed to be in the car all day. He completed just 6 laps, 0 timed laps. Because of a battery issue linked to Fernando Alonso's running the day before, Honda had almost no power unit parts left. A total disaster. Mercedes had their own morning drama when rookie Kimi Antonelli stopped on track with a pneumatic issue, losing over 2.5 hours while the team changed the power unit. George Russell had to pick up the slack in the afternoon, and McLaren, their reigning world champion Lando Norris, didn't even emerge for the afternoon session until halfway through. McLaren were doing work on the MCL40 after Oscar Piastri had driven in the morning, so the chaos was real. But through all of it, Ferrari were just quietly cooking. Let's talk about the lap, the one that sent shockwaves through the entire paddock. Charles Leclerc, Ferrari